This podcast is proud to be part of the talkSPORT Fan Network. talkSPORT. Powered by fans.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Red Side of the Trent as we come to you on Fixture Release Day, which is the form of Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, some of you out there, as we find out who we're going to play over the next, 9 months or so. I'd like to be joined by Reiss Lane. Reiss, how are you?
I'm good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, good, thank you. How do you find Fixture Release Day? Is it something that whets your appetite for the season ahead, or is it sort of, just prolonging the inevitable in a sense?
I think this season we're more excited for the playoff draw, aren't we? And then obviously we're hoping more European fixtures to come ahead. But yeah, you always, I feel, look for certain games. I mean, back in the Championship days, it was obviously the games with Derby usually. Obviously now they're still in that league and we're in the Premier League. I think you always look for opening day regardless. So back-to-back home games in terms of opening days, because it was a rarity, wasn't it, before that? I think it was Matty Cash, that goal against when we lost to West Brom when Norwich had a disaster. So, nice opening day at home. And then you always look for Boxing Day, but we're not playing on Boxing Day this year. So, such as the Premier League schedule. But, yeah, I don't, probably now I'm a bit obviously mature. I don't get too excited.
It's a strange one. I think I remember when we first got promoted, there was such a huge buzz about what's different. I suppose now it's about now we're sort of more established. Someone just touched word. Obviously, it's our fourth season up now. It's sort of okay, right? What sort of start can we get? Who we got at the end? The Boxing Day thing is really weird. I think we still can technically play on Boxing Day if Sky choose to move it to that date.
Okay,
but given we've got Man City at home, I'll suggest that's very possible. But yeah, I guess we'll have to see on that front. Obviously, TV rules and roost, unfortunately. But we'll have a little dissect through. So we'll start. For those watching on YouTube, you might not be able to see us for a little bit. We're having a few technical issues, and the image graphic is sort of swarming all of us. But so you'll see, if we can really go away, it's all for good reason. You should still be able to hear us. But yeah, so here are our list of fixtures for those who've seen. So I'll start off. So in August, we've got Brentford at home, Palace away, West Ham at home. Then in September, we've got Arsenal away, Burnley away, and Sunderland at home. Now, Reiss, that's not, as starts go, that could have been a lot worse, I feel. I think that if we can get 4 wins from those games, as a minimum, I know Elliot will be listening keenly and will want us to refrain using a certain term. But if we can hit the proverbial ground running and get, say, 12 points from those 16, obviously, Arsenal and Palace are the two that you'd look at and think they were more challenging. Would you is that a sort of start that you're sort of looking at and sort of thinking that's the path of the course? Or are you sort of expecting it to be a bit tougher than what we're maybe assuming?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, again, I'm not using the term like Elliot doesn't like, but when you look at on the face of it, a home game against Brentford, I know we have struggled to beat Brentford at home. We've not done it yet, but obviously now Thomas Frank's moved on from them. They're probably going to lose Mbuemo, might lose Visser. So there's 2 major players plus their manager. So you kind of don't know what you're going to get from Brentford really opening day. So that'll be an interesting one. But you'd have to say we'd go into that game as favourites. I know I'm contradicting myself and because we haven't beat them yet, but you'd probably say Forest are favourites for that game, which is good, which is what you want on opening day. Palace away will be a tough one, but they've not beat us yet since we've come back up. So we're a bit of a bogey side for them. There will probably be some extra needle in that now because of obviously, Marinakis asking for clarification on their Europa League position, which has been spun really well by the media, and it's kind of formed a bit of a rivalry on social media. So that'll be an interesting one. West Ham at home, would beat them every season. So again, another game where you look at on paper and think will be favourites. Obviously, Arsenal away is, going to be really tough. We've been beaten, haven't we, every season we've been there. Burnley away, you'd like to hope probably by the 5th game. I seen someone put it, on Twitter, I like to play newly promoted teams a bit later on in the season because that's when the souls have been taken away from them because they've been beaten every week. And so hopefully by that stage, you probably hope Burnley have not started the best, and Sunderland at home again. Forest are going to be favourites for. So I'd say the home games are favourable. The away games aren't too bad apart from the Arsenal one. That's the only one of the big 6 in there. So I think it's a pretty good start. We've obviously got to factor in as well. There's going to be playoffs, most likely in between the Brentford and the Palace game, and obviously the Palace and the West Ham game, which we need to get through. So that'll make it a bit more interesting. But this is the price of success. You unfortunately have to play more games, and obviously Forest have got to get used to that this season, hopefully, if we want to go deep in all competitions, really.
No, absolutely. I think there is probably an element as well of like getting Arsenal early might not be necessarily the worst thing. Obviously, some teams are slow to start the blocks. Arsenal have got a pretty rough start themselves as well. Actually, that could be, we could be catching them. Again, I hate saying this term, and I just get flashbacks to that first season where it's like, oh, we got them at a good time, then we go on to lose like 4-0 or something stupid, like West Ham.
The positive as well with Arsenal is we caught Liverpool on the back of an international break. That's that slot, isn't it? So you never know. Arsenal have a lot of players travelling. Even we do nowadays, because every Premier League team is pretty much the same. You might catch them a little bit rusty, and we might be able to take advantage of that. So that's another positive there.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember Fulham, last year, the year before, I remember them getting a win. I think it was Palhinha scored, I seem to remember, or they got a draw or something like that. It was a bit like, oh, bloody hell. So, yeah, you never know. It'd be good to get a big test early as well, sort of see what's what as well. But, yeah, going back to the stream, you move into October. So, October, you've got Newcastle away, Chelsea at home, Bournemouth away. That immediately looks like a Halloween trick or treat. That's more trick than treat with all 3 of those teams. And then in November, you've got Man United at home, Leeds at home, Liverpool away, and then Brighton at home. So a bit of a mixed bag there. I mean, October looks like it could be potentially quite rough, but maybe scope to sort of pick up in November again.
Yeah, again, because you're going to hopefully start that European campaign at the start of October. So I think that will be before the Newcastle game, won't it? Newcastle are a pretty good side, so that'll be tough. Obviously, Chelsea at home again, big 6 side, but they're going to have to, again, themselves cope with European football this season. I know they've had Conference League, but they've been able to rotate in that tournament, whereas Champions League, they're going to want to play the best players, and the best players are going to want to play. So they've got to get used to that. I mean, they've got a big enough squad for it, and they're still adding to it. Bournemouth away, well.
Oh, can't really worse than last year.
Well, I mean, the first 2 seasons we drew both times 1-1, didn't we? I mean, last season was a disaster there, but we just can't seem to beat Bournemouth.
This will be the year. This will be the year we finally
hopefully. But I mean, if you obviously went there and took a point, you'd be pretty pleased, wouldn't you, on the face of it?
Yeah, you'd probably take it on the face of it.
I mean, going into November, who's guessed what Manchester United are going to be in come that time? I think that by that time, we're probably going to know what they are going to be like, which is either Amorim under serious pressure or they're actually on the right track again. That'll be interesting. Again, Leeds at home, newly promoted team is a favourable game for us on paper. You can't write any games off because they're all tough in this league, but you have to evaluate on paper at the minute. Liverpool away is probably one you look at and think, God, that's probably one of the hardest games of the season, but we went there and won last year, so who knows? Yeah. Again, I think that's on the back of an international break, I believe, because there's no 15th, there's no game there, so I'm guessing that's the November break. So again, we might catch them cold, and it might be deja vu from last season. And then Brighton home is going to be one of them games. I mean, this season was a bit of an anomaly, wasn't it? always a goal fest with Brighton. I mean, was it first season we won 3-1? The season before last we lost 3-2, 7-0 this season. So I think that is a game you'll probably get goals in, and they're the kind of side where you're looking at home really. If you obviously want to get back in the top half, they're probably going to be in and around your Brighton, them type of teams. They're kind of the 6 pointers at home. So you'd be, that's another game really you'd be wanting to take 3 points at home.
No, absolutely, yeah. It'll be interesting to see how Brighton sort of approach that fixture. I think after, because when you talk about taking souls, I mean, obviously, beat them 7-0 and then dump them out of the deny them a place at Wembley a few weeks later. I'm sure they want to make amends.
It got them back on track a little bit, didn't it?
It did,
because they did go on a really good run of form until that cup game, didn't they? I think was it 5 or 6 in a row.
That break came at a really bad time, I think. Yeah. Obviously, we still need to sort out the situation of Forest not winning games at home. It hasn't happened since the 1st of April.
Yeah.
But I'm sure we'll hopefully change that. And then we've got move to December. So we've got Wolves away, Everton away, Spurs at home, Fulham away. Then the Christmas fixture, Boxing Day fixture. Well, there isn't a Boxing Day. Manchester City at home, and then Everton at home to round off 2025. And then you move into January, you've got Villa away, West Ham away, Arsenal at home, Brentford away, and then Palace at home. But it's worth noting that from the 21st of December to the 18th of January is AFCON Cup of Nations. So we'll likely be without Sangare, Bolly, Aina, potentially Carmo if he's in around the squads. If we sign Visser, he'll be probably out AFCON as well. So that'll probably stretch from, you'd assume, Spurs being the last game that they'll be there for, and then they probably come back for maybe Palace at home at the end of the month of January. So you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games out really if any one of those teams goes deep. And obviously with them being playing for Ivory Coast and Nigeria, there's a good chance those two will go quite deep. So as we all know,
I think they're the holders, aren't they, Ivory Coast?
They are, yeah. Obviously, it was the final, wasn't it? Ivory Coast and Nigeria. Obviously, potentially Big T, if he's still with us as well. He could be getting up to speed around that sort of time. Who knows? But that could be quite a tricky one. Obviously, AFCON's not been necessarily the kindest to us. I saw them in the first season where we got absolutely blitzed by it. But do you think that maybe recruitment will be having more of an eye on that for this summer to make sure that we aren't so short around that sort of time?
Yeah, because we've mentioned this in the for those who've watched or listened in this kind of squad assessment pod. We do need backup fullbacks who probably up and coming or young players, or who can actually challenge Nico and Aina, who've got those shirts at the minute, because that's where we kind of fell short at the back end of the season. Aina was injured. Toffolo come in a couple of games, but now he's been let go. Obviously, Zach Abbott played there in the FA Cup final, which he did fine, but it wasn't ideal. Chucking in a young lad really in that position. So they are positions we need to reinforce, especially with AFCON coming up. Like you said, Christian, you'd probably expect Nigeria and Côte d'Ivoire to go quite far, with being two of the more powerhouse nations of African football. Obviously, last season is where we had this amazing run, wasn't it, through December? Was it 6 or 7 on a bounce we won, wasn't it? So it's going to take some doing to replicate that. It's going to be as well. When you are assessing these fixtures, it is with fixtures you always do get an element of luck when you face certain teams. Like, for example, when we played Everton away last season, Sean Dyche was basically staring down the barrel of getting sacked. And we go there and we completely run all over and beat them 2-0. If we play them a few weeks later and David Moyes has took over, where they've got a bit of a bounce, etc., it's going to be a lot tougher game. So, obviously Christmas is very packed and with the AFCON as well. Man City will be having players going. Marmouche.
And like Nori as well, so the entire left side.
Nori, yeah. So everyone will feel it a bit, but Forest have obviously got to reinforce recruitment-wise. But we know that anyway, even with or without AFCON. So, it'll be an interesting period. I think the Conference League will kind of be wrapped up by then, won't it, in terms of the group stage. And also, Forest, if we do get to that stage, will want to go through in that top 8, because then you avoid a 2-legged playoff in January to get into like the next. It's like a knockout to the next knockout. So that is paramount as well. We kind of get in that, so we avoid a couple of games. But yeah, always interesting periods, aren't they? Christmas and obviously going into January.
Very much so. Looks like we'll be becoming good friends with Everton as well, having played them twice in December. I don't think I've ever seen that before, have I? Literally been 3 weeks apart, 2 different league games. This team too.
Do you remember when we beat Derby 5-2? That was at the back end of December, and then the return fixture was at the back end of January. Yeah, so that's a close one. There probably has been a close one. I'm just trying to think of games that have postponed in the Premier League. Maybe it's a bit close, but I can't think off the top of my head. But that one springs to mind, that Derby one. Beating them twice in like a month was lovely.
Chris Collins' last game as he petulantly threw his gloves walking off the pitch and ran out the tunnel.
Yes.
And Moxley getting sent off. Sure getting booked for leading the charge in front of the away end. What a day that was.
Yeah, good times.
But yeah, obviously back into the present day, obviously I imagine we'll have Spirit of the Blues in their heads for quite a while for that month. But
looking forward, be a nice Everton, obviously new ground for everybody.
Yeah, new ground. Absolutely, yeah. Then out of the as we come towards the end of the winter periods, you got February kicks off with Leeds away. Then we've got Wolves at home, Liverpool at home, and then Brighton away. Then in March it's Manchester City away, Fulham at home, Spurs away. Which is, I swear, when we had Leeds before, we had Leeds at the start of February when we beat them 1-0. Johnson scored.
Yeah,
the cracker one. Again, there's games there to be. I sort of look at it. It's again without again, you're right. It's weird because you're sort of playing on paper effectively. But you look at Leeds, Wolves, Fulham at home, I'd say, and Brighton especially. You look at those and think, there's points to be had there. And then obviously the Sky 6 teams, we've shown we can cause some problems as well. Yeah. But for me, I think it'll be about how we balance. Assuming we get through this playoff against bloody FC car park somewhere, then assuming we get through that and don't get taken to penalties, then because obviously, so I know Chelsea when they got through, they had Copenhagen, I think around February time, they went to that, and then it's about I suppose looking at this as well. Would you take a season where Forest go very, very deep in the Conference League, potentially all the way, the league form like falters and we finish say like 12th, 13th? Would you accept that?
Oh, absolutely. I would personally, as a fan, if we was to go on, I think, to win the Conference League, because I do look at the Conference League as a tournament we can win. I know we've not been in Europe for 30 years, but the big 5 leagues, which is obviously yours, Fiorentina, Mainz, Strasbourg, and Rayo Vallecano, from Spain. You look at them teams. I know Fiorentina have got the experience, but Strasbourg, Mainz, and Vallecano are all very new to Europe as well.
Strasbourg have lost a lot of players too.
Yeah, Fiorentina just keep losing in finals and semi-finals of that tournament. So it'd probably be typical Drew them in the final, and the final get over the hurdle with
Milenkovic on goal.
Because as well, you've got to look at it as the Conference League is, in my opinion as well, probably his best chance of getting into Europe again.
I'd agree with that
tournament. So that is important. The club have shown how important it is in regards to, as soon as kind of the season ended, they were putting posts up about, we're in this tournament, and Marinakis has won it with Olympiacos. We've seen how West Ham took it so seriously. Obviously, Al, my friend who supports Roma, who are really big club, Roma, they were over the moon when they won it. I think they were the first winners. So it's going to be, for a side who's not been in Europe for 30 years. I know it is this newly formed competition, and it is the 3rd tier of European competitions, but it is extremely important. So as long as we don't get into any real difficulty in a relegation battle, I think most fans would probably say, they're happy to drop a few places in the league if they can go deep and look at winning the Conference League, for sure, for me.
No, I absolutely agree with that. But what would be interesting, though, is that you look at, I think Dansko posted this earlier. He said that for anyone worried about the Thursday-Sunday fixture schedule, Nuno manages at Wolves. So 1-0 win away at Besiktas, which is a big Willy volley goal in the 93rd minute, I believe. That was on a Thursday. Obviously, it's away in Turkey as well. 3 days later, one away at Man City, 2-0. Out of the 12 games played straight after European games, Wolves only lost 2 of them. Also, Wolves won their qualifying game 8-0 in aggregate. So with Nuno there, I think there is a safe pair of hands that could maybe sort of elevate that, sort of maintain some sort of continuity. But I thoroughly agree. If we sort of, if we're around this sort of time of the season now, where going into April, and you look at Forest and think pretty much mathematically or realistically safe, I'd be more than happy to put all the eggs in the Conference League basket if we're still in it. Play the B team in the league. I think that means so much to us as fans. Like you said, represents a huge opportunity getting back into Europe for another season. Yeah, I think that would definitely be the way to go. And I think you'd like to think a lot of fans would be so that sort of patience as well.
Yeah, I don't. Obviously, they're not gonna. They might rest an odd 1 or 2 in the league, but as well, the league's your bread and butter, and especially with the financial aspect of how far, it's millions it gets you up the table. I think it's 2.5 million per position. I mean, it's for Tottenham and United, it was kind of like, well, they're getting into the Champions League, which is where all their money's kind of at. So they did, toss it off. But yeah, we'll have to see. We can't run before we can walk into. Just get through this playoff first, and then we'll see what happens. That's another string to us, but that Nuno's had the experience with Wolves in this tournament. Well, I know it's Europa League, but it's very similar concept in terms of Thursday, Sunday. So he'll have the experience of that. Obviously, if he keeps like the likes of Willy Bolly around, who's again probably good in the dressing room experience, and then you've got the likes of Milenkovic, who's played in this tournament. Obviously, Sangare's played in qualifying rounds for PSV. So you're going to have to, Chris Wood years ago. So you're going to have to lean on all these experiences and these little kind of tricks to, make sure we are competitive across all fronts, because we know Marinakis will want us to be competitive across every competition, and include the Carabao and the FA Cup in that, because we obviously skip around, I believe, this year for the Carabao. So that's another game less.
Straight to the third round to get in. But yeah.
May as well put us in the final. Why not?
Oh, dear. And then obviously we wrap up with April. So we got start April with Villa at home. Again, obviously Villa again in April. Burnley at home. Sunderland away. And then we got, to wrap it off completely, Chelsea away in May again. Flashbacks to that 2-2 draw with Taiwo scoring. Newcastle at home. Man United away, last away game. And then final game this season, Bournemouth at home. So the mighty Bournemouth come to the City Ground again. It's got to end this season, this bloody curse they've got. The one out of all those, obviously it's a particularly rough ending, I think. I'd say from Sunderland onwards, because Sunderland, if they've still got something to fight for by that point, that could be a very, very awkward trip.
Burnley at home as well, if they're the same. You
absolutely.
Never know, do you?
Yeah. I mean, I sort of perhaps naively omitted them because of the Scott Parker element, but you never know. Then you look at obviously Chelsea, Newcastle. It is weird we've got those two next to each other in both brackets. United away, obviously we saw this season, United's their final away game after sort of like turgid season they had, pulled a performance out of the bag to beat Aston Villa, had something on the line, and then Bournemouth. So obviously from your side of things, how do you sort of see that end? And by that point, I guess, is it the case that hopefully it's all eyes on Leipzig, but how are you sort of seeing those games play out?
Yeah, I mean, obviously previewing the fixtures, like I said earlier, it is hard to kind of, you know what you're going to get on paper, because you have to take each game as it comes, and every game throws up different scenarios of where teams are. You're kind of just predicting, aren't you, at the minute? You'd expect Chelsea to be up there. You'd expect Newcastle definitely to be top half, probably fighting. But I'm sure definitely Chelsea, Newcastle as well. I think a few people will. Well, I think they will definitely be fighting for the probably lesser European competitions. Yeah. United's one of them. We don't really know until we get into the season. Bournemouth at home, well, it's just our bogey side, isn't it? So that's a hurdle we're going to have to overcome. And then, like you said, hopefully all goes to Leipzig. But yeah, we'll just have to take it as it comes, won't it? And we'll kind of see what happens. But every game is going to be tough. It's hard to write any teams off. I know you look at games being more favourable, and I'll say that instead of winnable for Elliot, which is the term to use. But until we get into the swing of things, we're kind of not going to know what's what. So yeah, that's why I don't kind of look into the fixtures too much. I mean, to be fair, you putting them on screens the first time I've had a proper real look into them, and I've only just seen that Man U as last away, to be honest. So yeah, we'll see come August how we start the season.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I mean, it's exciting stuff. I mean, I think I was saying the other day today, for us, like I'm sort of at a point now where I'm quite ready for Forest again. As much as I was sort of like not wanting to press fast forward in the season, because I could just see what was going to happen in Forest being Forest. But I'm at a point now. It's like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm excited this year for the adventure. I'm excited for the season ahead. So
everyone's excited for the draw, aren't they? I think we all kind of want to know who we're going to get in this playoff. I think everyone's obviously the first couple of rounds have come out yesterday, and I think today as well. And obviously, kind of looking at some ties, and like everyone takes a mick out of the Conference League, but like I looked at a couple of ties here, like Legia Warsaw could play Sparta Prague in the second Conference League round, for example.
Yeah.
You know, I know these aren't household European names, but these are teams we know. It's not X from Kazakhstan or X from Armenia, for example. Like I saw another one was Austria Vienna v I think Hapoel Beersheva, the Israeli side. You know, these are teams we kind of know of. So it's not like, you know, teams from, like I said, from Gibraltar and the Faroe Islands who no one's ever heard of. And there will be some decent teams in it come, you know, the playoff and the main stage.
I think we're all sort of all forgetting as well. There's a good chance that teams who, I mean, in theory, we could end up playing Rangers. I think if they lose to Panathinaikos and lose the Europa League playoff, you do run a risk of getting a Champions League qualification team into the third or fourth round. So, you know, it isn't all, you know.
They'll likely be seeded, won't they? I think.
Yeah, of course they will. Yeah, but. Yeah, I'm looking. You've got St Joseph's versus Cliftonville as first
Gibraltar against Northern Ireland. I see Cliftonville. If they get through, they play Shamrock Rovers. I saw that of Ireland. So,
give me one of those in the playoff round. Like, let's just get the job done by half time, and then we can all sort of just relax and take it easy. But that won't happen. We're not going to bloody penalties against Desic from Montenegro, where they're from. But
just to mention as well, for obviously those that don't know, the Brentford home game clashes with Trent Rockets at home, so that is likely to be moved from the Saturday. So it could be a Friday night, it could be a Sunday. It might end up being a Saturday, but obviously, you know, these things aren't really planned, are they? So that could be moved as well. So there's going to be a lot of movement on fixtures this season, especially obviously if we get in the Conference League proper.
I'd say, get used to games being on a Sunday, I reckon, because
unfortunately,
if we do get through, that will be a very regular common.
It is worthwhile for once.
Of course it is, yeah. Like it's the first time in 30 odd years that Forest game in Europe. It's a viable sacrifice.
Until we draw TNS, then
definitely the country then at least save them the air miles. One thing Lee pointed out earlier, actually, obviously couldn't be with us today for the pod. He said that in regards to the Brentford game, the thing that he finds a bit of a not annoying, but it's more the fact that Mbeumo and Wissa are probably likely to still be there by that point. The way it's currently going, obviously very early to tell, but the Mbeumo saga looks like it will be a saga. Obviously, United's being Man United and sacking the caterers, stewards, and whatever else to try and finance it.
I think that'll be kind of done in Mbeumo by the time the season comes. What we're in now, we're going mid-June. You know, players are probably still on holiday. It's like obviously Liverpool agreed that fee if Florian Wirtz, and I think he's only which was last week, only flew in for his medical this week, for example. So I think they'll kind of be done. This is an interesting one because they've obviously got that extension which they will activate. You know, there's been a few rumours, which is a bit of a cheap link. He might be going to Tottenham. I've seen also they value him at 50 million. I mean, if they value him at that, coming to Forest is a non-starter, isn't it? Unfortunately.
No, we'll have to see how it goes. But yeah, I'm interested by Brentford, obviously, with likely being Keith Andrews in charge, which is a huge jump into the unknown. Losing two of your best players as well, potentially. That's.
Well, I've got a feeling it's probably not going to be him, because you'd think if they'd had enlightened on him, they'd announced it already, because he's already in the building.
Yeah.
I know your favourite reporter, Alex Crook, was mentioning yesterday that they're quite keen on Kieran McKenna and is it Francesco Fagioli? I think just managed Ajax. Apparently, he was really keen on a Premier League move, and he was on the shortlist. So, yeah, it would be an interesting one if they did give it to Andrews, because I know they do like to recruit from it with him, which is what they did with Thomas Frank. Well, that was in the Championship. So to give someone a first job in the Premier League, who's been a coach, would be a very big risk for me. But yeah,
absolutely, yeah. But moving on to other developments, I suppose it's been quite good today to see that there's been big movement on the City Grounds development at long last. Let me just try and get the statement up for you, which is on the club website. Right, so the club statement reads: Nottingham Forest has been in regular dialogue with Rushcliffe Borough Council, Nottingham City Council, and Nottinghamshire County Council regarding the development of the City Grounds. The parties can confirm they are working towards a Rushcliffe Borough Council planning committee date of Thursday, 26th of June, to consider the application. There'll be no further comment other than required by the relevant legal process. The fact this has all come to life suggests that it is likely now that that we will finally get the green light on development. I know it's come out as well. Some of the documents have come out online in advance of it, which I'm sure you can probably see on one of the council websites. And obviously that explains that, the S106 still agrees, Forest have agreed to a number of aspects of the local community. The enabling link between the residential development and ground development has been removed. So one doesn't require the other anymore, because I know Marinakis had designed the flats by the club shop. So Forest are looking at replacement facilities for the Britannia Boathouse, which is more than fair enough. About 800 grand towards local education and health stuff, 200 grand towards local sports pitches, and 100 grand towards local play areas. And again, I'm not entirely sure what that has to do with Forest building a new stand, but these are relevant. These are the hurdles that the club has to jump through. But yeah, Reiss, finally looks like it's happening. I mean, it's been a long time coming. How do you sort of feel about it all? Obviously, it's been a bit of a roller coaster in a number of ways with the Toten link and God knows what else. But how do you sort of feel about things now? It looks like we might actually be on the verge of it. Diggers on site.
Well, I mean, it's gone on for so long until you kind of see a bulldozer arrive and spades in the ground. You're not gonna, probably not believe it, but think it's kind of happening because it's just gone on for so long. I mean, the main stands needed replacing. God, probably since us guys were born, hadn't it? I mean, obviously, it was there Euro '96, for example. Even then it looked outdated. So we're now in 2025 and it's completely outdated, and it needs going. I know obviously we have Matt who comes on the pod who sits in there, and us guys sitting there for cup games, etc. And you do enjoy the nostalgia of it, but the club are desperate for some modern facilities. And I know there's like a few fans saying now, well, there's only 5k extra seats, but you've also got to think of the facilities for the players, the facilities for the coaching staff, the facilities for the media. We've got a temporary studio technically at the minute. All these will be housed in this new stand. You'd have a club shop probably in that stand as well. The concourses, people will be able to actually move in the concourses and have a beer. So you've got to think of all them factors as well. And it's only positive, and it needs to happen, as soon as possible. Unfortunately, I just reading a few bits. The boat club has kind of got to be, up and away and built somewhere else and fully activated before we can start demolishing that. So that is a little hurdle. You'd kind of hope they've really got a plan where the new one's going to be situated, because it has gone on for so long, and planning permission's kind of ready to go for that. And then obviously, like Dan Taylor put in the article, we can get underway next summer, really. The old ground, to be honest, I really love the City Ground because it's our home, and the nostalgia, walking over Trent Bridge. Every time you walk over Trent Bridge, you get that feeling, don't you? It's special, but the ground does need doing up. I think every single stand, really. You kind of look, the obviously first thing is the main stand, because let's be honest, it's an eyesore, isn't it? Obviously, then it's looking at the Bridgeford stand being raised. But even going further down the line, you'd probably even look at upgrading the Trent end and the Brian Clough stand. I know fans going about our smaller concourses, for example, in the Brian Clough stand. So even down the line, you'd think maybe knocking them down and rebuilding, similar to what like Liverpool are doing, really, kind of a stand-by-stand basis. But yeah, hopefully, mate, we can kind of see some progress. But obviously, that meeting is going to be met by some NIMBYs because that's just the UK, unfortunately. For those who watch Clarkson's Farm, you've seen it, councils, people, and this is why kind of, we're a little bit anti-growth, aren't we, in the UK at times, and it is bleeding annoying. But yeah, hopefully we can get over that hurdle, and then we can, like I said, starting at the end of this season coming, we can get spades in the ground and start moving because it's long overdue. And I think for the majority of fans, I'm glad we're staying. And also that, the club can start getting some more revenue in with the extra seats and with, being able to maybe hold events like the boxing, obviously concerts, and on the concourses, the food and drink, which is, again, something else that needs improving. More fans can go in and spend it in the concourses, and as well the extra seats, extra fans, it'll be good for the businesses around the ground as well. So yeah, fingers crossed, mate. It's finally looking like we might be on the road to something.
Certainly the dream. Yeah, I think as well. I think a lot of people are overlooking the fact as well that I think that the main stand, it seems like a pathway to me, like a block. I think that it'll probably be designed with expansion of the Bridgeford stand, especially in mind. I reckon, and that, well, again, you transform the club's ground, then, don't you? You look at 40,000 capacity seater stadium, and suddenly it's. I personally think 40,000 is fine for a club of Forest size.
I agree.
I know people compare it to Leeds and Newcastle and whatever else, and Everton and whatnot, but 40,000 is fine. I mean, I don't know if it's different for us because obviously we can remember when it was really bad. Like I remember during the Fawaz times. I remember boycotting during the Fawaz times. When there was like 15,000 going into the grounds for games because people didn't want to put money into his pocket. We might be a world away from that now, but I think because we know that it doesn't take that much to sort of go back towards that. Do you really want like when Leeds and Villa came down, you're not selling to the upper tier, which is completely empty. Do you really want things like that, Forest? That's
Yeah, well, you don't want 10,000 empty seats. What would take the mick out of Man City for? And you also, with respect, some people might disagree with this, but you also don't want 10,000 United and Liverpool fans from Nottingham, in the ground, which would completely, kind of ruin the atmosphere. Leeds, one team, I know they're applying for 50,000, but they're one team city, a bigger city than Nottingham, and they're owned by Americans who probably would be happy to have 10,000 tourists in the ground.
Yeah.
But, we always kind of, as Forest fans, like to think that we're not like the tourist clubs in commas. So, yeah, 40,000 is plenty for me. And, you can always, obviously, if it gets to a point where 40,000 might be too much, which I don't personally think it will be, then you also could look to expand even further. You've got two corners next to the Trent end, for example, which you could fill. So, yeah, there's plenty of options. It's just obviously it's a pain in the backside dealing with councils and whoever else.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways, weirdly, I reckon if they wanted to renovate the Brian Clough stand, that'd probably be the easiest one out of the four to do because of all that space behind it, which obviously is club owned. So you just go, well, like the fan zone, for example, is sprung up out of nowhere.
You also have to look at it from a logistics point of view of, it's all right saying you had his space, but there's also, you've got to think, where do the away fans, coaches go? Where does this go? Where does that go?
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah,
there is a lot of things like moving parts into place, but yeah, at the end of the day as well, I know people are annoyed at the boat club, but they're there. You can't just boot them out.
Right? Yeah, you can't. But you can't just evict someone and say that's
and knock it down and basically tell you to get on your way. And look, the council's obviously had, Christian, me, I'm not into politics, but the council has had its own issues. The city council, so they're going to want Forest to pay for all these improvements so they don't have to pay for it, is the truth. Whereas really it should be a joint effort because, Forest are, we've seen this with Ratcliffe, haven't we? He was planning to build this new stadium if the government would fund around it because you're bringing in revenue to the region. So really it should kind of be a joint effort. And it always felt to me at times that it's been Forest against the council, which is obviously from our point of view quite annoying. And then obviously, like I said, you're going to get some NIMBYs moaning because someone might have a delivery blocking a drive for 30 seconds. But such is life. But hopefully maybe it just gets the ball rolling because it's been far too long. It really has.
Yeah, I think what hasn't helped, and I think what may have applied more public pressure is you look at Birmingham. Obviously, Birmingham Council completely allows Birmingham City to have this massive, American park thing with 60,000 seats for Birmingham City, which of course I never fill, and all these other aspects of stuff for local council. You look at Newcastle, environmentally protected land in Leeds Park. That looks like they're going to develop on that to build a new stadium. You look at Leeds, obviously, Leeds Council has been very accommodating towards Leeds United, renovating Ellen Road. Merseyside's council, again, look at Liverpool with Anfield, and obviously Everton with Bramley-Moore Dock. And then you look at ours, it's just but
when obviously, and this has happened at Ilkeston on a lesser scale as well. They wanted to build a new stand and the council blocked that. But as soon as there's good news for example, with us when we got promoted, the council are straight there. Oh yeah, use a market square. Everyone's congratulating everybody, but they kind of don't want to help you out at the same time. Advance because it might upset one or two in a local area. But like I said, that's just the UK. It's pretty frustrating.
Very much so. But moving on to other matters as well, there's been just a few little transfer tidbits to go through. The Sun have been reporting that Callum Hudson-Odoi has been offered a new contract, when talks been offered a new contract amidst interest from Manchester United and Napoli especially. Obviously, we spoke about this before, Reiss. It just seems that these sort of rumours sort of come in ebbs and flows, doesn't it? But supposedly Conte wants him because he's worked with him at Chelsea. Supposedly United told United in no uncertain terms no in January. I imagine that was a much longer, perhaps more expletive-laden sentence towards our friends over there. But what do you think? I mean, it's a bit of a crossroads really moment, because if he doesn't sign a new contract, he sort of goes, and we go towards the end of August, and he still hasn't signed one. What do you think the clubs sort of do? Because it's a big game of poker to play then. Because do you sort of wait till January? Do you risk going to January when you can go to other people on a free anyway? It's
well, you could say the league champions risked it with Van Dijk and Salah this season. I think Trent was always going to go to Madrid. You could tell by his fluent Spanish he'd been, that move had been plotted for quite a while. But fair play to him, I'd do the exact same. But yeah, ideally you want it sorted, don't you? Because as well, if you do go through a bad run of form, fans start saying, "Oh, where's his head at?" Which is a fair question. So ideally, you want it sorted. There might be a few links put in the press because he might want a bit more money, for example. But I'd imagine he's on good money. I imagine he's one of our top earners, coming from Chelsea, and with the funds we paid for him $3 million. Obviously, the issue is in regards to selling him is if he doesn't want to be here, then you would look to sell because you don't want to keep players you don't want to play for us. The problem is we don't we mentioned on the pod before, we don't know what really the sell-on clause is for Chelsea. So would kind of a deal be viable, for example? So yeah, I mean, ideally we want all these players to sign new contracts. Again, we spoke this before: Nico, Williams, Aina, Gibbs-White, Hudson-Odoi, because once you get into your last 2 years, especially, the value starts to tumble down a little bit, especially last year. So hopefully he'll sign a new deal because, it would take, because you're losing a starting player for start. So you'd take some money to replace him, and we're not going to replace him for the money we paid, £3 million.
No chance. No chance at all.
Who do you get for that? You get nobody for that nowadays. So,
no.
So yeah, hopefully he can sign a new deal. But I think Napoli have been linked with quite a few left wingers, haven't they? They've been linked with Garnacho, been linked with Grealish. Obviously, he's the latest one. So yeah, we'll just have to see. But hopefully he signs a new deal. Otherwise, like again we've said on previous pods, the club are going to have to make decisions in the best interests of the club, really.
Given that sell-on clause, we don't know the full effects of it, whether it's 50% or whatever else, would you say, okay, we paid 3 million for him, is it worth just keeping him regardless? Because like you said, you can't really replace someone for 3 million. It's not going to smash the PSR thing. Let's say he's happy to play, but obviously doesn't want to sign on.
That would be a club decision because they're inside the club, so they'd know probably where his head's at.
Yeah.
You know, like, to be fair I know Liverpool fans take the nick out of some of his performances, but you never kind of watched Trent last season and thought, yeah, he's completely tossed it off. He was still a really big cog in them winning the league last season. You obviously just want, you know, you don't really want that happening for us where players kind of tossing it off, because we've seen it in the past, and with the amount of mercenaries we've had at the club. You know, we could go through them all, couldn't we? We're basically here for a payday and kind of coming to the latter stage of the career. Thankfully, Hudson-Odoi's in the prime of his career, so you'd think he'd want to keep playing well to get a good move. But only the club will know that mix. They'll know the sell-on clause, and they'll know where his head's at. So that'll be, like I said, a decision for the club to be made, and they've just got to do what's best for Forest at the end of the day. But he would. I know his goals and assists output wasn't as good this season as the first season he signed, but you know that doesn't tell the full story when you look. You know, his ball retention, just one aspect. So it would take some replacing. Yeah,
like the way he going from the ball on the wing and gets going up the pitch. It's very difficult to add the stats.
You've also got another winger on the other side who, if Newcastle, which I don't think they will touch wood, but if they offered, let's say they offered 65 million, another decision would have to be made. Yeah. And then you're wanting wingers to compete with these two players, and then all of a sudden your two wingers might be out the door. So yeah, I've said this before with Marinakis. I think, you know, even the fans who, you know, had doubts about him, and I include myself, that in the early stages at Forest, because, you know, there was a lot of things what weren't right. I'd never thought he's sold a player under value. He's always maximised the value. You know, people could argue a little bit maybe with Matty Cash, but 15 million for a player who'd converted to right back for one season, I thought was good, decent value. You look at Assam Belonga, you look at obviously Apaya, where his career's gone. Brennan Johnson, even though we had this, you know, PSR issue, you know, they took a hit and they managed to get nearly 50 million for him. So I think you just got to trust the club on that, and they'll do the right thing.
No, I would agree. It'd be interesting to see how it goes. Obviously, like you said, hopefully he just signs a new 5-year contract.
Problem solved.
Yeah, exactly. No issue at all. But
even if maybe he wanted, like, again, this, I'm kind of repeating myself a lot, but even if he signed, you know, another, say, 1-year deal where there's, I don't know, a decent release clause in it, you know what I mean? Like, I always use the example, McAllister did it for Brighton, Liverpool took him, where at least we get a decent amount of money. But well, hopefully he signs and that'll be the end of it, but we'll see.
Yeah. Even Cunha. Cunha,
yeah, true.
Very, very clearly wanted to leave in January, but still signed a new deal, got the club some money and then left. Whether that affects his reputation is another matter, but at least he had the club sorted, I suppose.
Yeah.
But lastly, obviously, it was with sadness that Harry Toffolo obviously left the club. He's been linked with Rangers, Norwich, and all sorts. But yeah, it's a bit weird because I suppose, like, we haven't really seen a club to give that sort of treatment to a leaving player in quite some time. But you know, that's certainly rather red carpet out for him, and it sort of highlighted all the things he's done off the field as well, which, you know, has been absolutely tremendous and had a huge impact on a lot of people. How do you sort of feel about the whole Toffolo departure? I mean, I feel from a footballing side it was probably necessary for his side as much as it is for ours, but still obviously tinged with sadness at the same time.
Yeah, from a footballing perspective, I think it's the right decision because I think is he 30 this year?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
You know what? How many games did he play in the Premier League for us last season? 3 or 4, maybe. Not many at all. I mean, from a footballing perspective, you know, and you can say this more than me, but you want to go out and play. Look, he looks to me like the kind of bloke who he won't kick up a fuss, but he wants to play football. And I think he'd be a great signing for any Championship team. And to be honest, I know I don't like saying this on a Forest pod, but I'm not going to name the local teams around us who are in the Championship, but he looks pretty settled in this area. And I think I'd be all over that deal on a free, especially because his family look really settled in this area. So I'd personally be all over that if I one of them type of clubs. Rangers would be a great move for him. If he wants to move up to Scotland, obviously, massive club Rangers. We obviously know all what comes up there with, the rivalry with Celtic, etc. But he got it mainly because just of the work, off the field, because he's gone above and beyond. We've just spoke about mercenaries who played for Forest over the years. This is a guy who's not played very much this season. To be fair, ever since he's probably been brought in, never really been first choice left back. You look at the first season we signed him, then Renan Loddy come in, overtook that spot. Obviously last season we kind of brought Aina in, didn't we? And we had Montiel on the other side. So there's obviously Tavares. Obviously now Nico's gone into that position. So he's never really been the top choice. I've always thought he's been kind of one of them players who has been signed, and it would be after a couple of years, look, thank you for getting us starting off with a base in the Premier League, but we'll shake hands and move on. But yeah, for the work he's done off the pitch, I follow several people on Twitter who's done mental health with the bottled up blokes. Yeah, he gets the send off he deserves for just going above and beyond what his kind of remit as a footballer is. And you don't get a lot of them in football now. So, yeah, he's one of them who every Forest fan will say, despite the fact he hasn't played a lot for us this season, especially, everyone will wish him the best. And, I hope he does get a good move next. Hopefully not to one of the, not to the likes of Derby, but I could obviously see that from his family's point of view and the Championship club's point of view. It'll be a good signing, I think, for any Championship club, and even maybe, as a steady head for even a newly promoted side. So I wish him the best, and it's very similar to the Cohen Davis deal, isn't it? All them years ago, we kind of thought Davis was going to be the one, similar to O'Brien, and then it ends up being the kind of B side who's become more the A side. So very typically Forest, that.
Very much so, yeah. But no, I think it obviously goes for great wishes. I mean, it's 46 games and 1 goal in the Premier League for us. 57 apps in all competitions. He obviously played 7 times this season, but you never sort of see him complain about it. You never heard anything about that in the press. It was like everything else just got on with it. When he came from the Prem, obviously that block at goal line clearance at Tottenham, for example, he's worn the shirt with distinction, I'd say. And I think even though he hasn't necessarily played as much as he probably would have liked to, whatever else, he's never gets a pass about. He never let anyone down.
I think it is always nice as well from a footballing fan perspective to see players who've kind of gone through the pyramid, who played at like every single level, and he's one who's kind of done that. He's obviously got to the Premier League, and obviously he might have to drop back into the Championship now, but he can look back at his career and say, look, I've played at the highest level. I've come from kind of the bottom of the pyramid, played at the highest level, and I think. You can't have a bad word about him. You really can't.
No, not at all. But yeah, that's it for us, I think, honestly. So hope you sort of circling dates of potential home and away games sort of look forward to and go to. Obviously, we'll keep you updated if there's any other, or we'll react accordingly if there's any other transfer interests or whatever else. So,
I think Omar is pretty much done, isn't it? Strasbourg have activated his deal for those who haven't seen. It looks like so.
That's not really. I mean, I think that's to be expected, isn't it? Yeah, all the best again.
See you in the Conference League when you come back and score against us. Such would be Forest.
Yeah, no, obviously we haven't seen the financials for that, but obviously if we've got, even if he's just covered a PSR for him, that's fine.
If you're breaking even.
Deal with that, and all the best for him. Deserve to be playing football. Got opportunity to do that now.
He did all right when he played for us. Obviously, there's no denying he's not Milenkovic levels, which is used coming really kind of took that share. But I thought he did all right. He would have been fine for me personally as a backup. But obviously, if he's playing for Strasbourg or in a top 5 league and going to be in the Conference League themselves. You know, Liam Rossinius seems a really good young manager who probably, you know, good coach, you know, maybe take him to the next level. So, yeah, I wish him the best.
Yeah, so good luck to him, yeah. But yeah, we will be back in due course. I feel we've got a few things, a few surprises up our sleeves to come over the coming weeks and months. But yeah, until then, enjoy the sunshine. It's been pretty bright down here. And yeah, go on your Reds.